Hey, this is William Tincup and Ryan Leary, and you are listening and hopefully watching Inside the C-Suite podcast. We got Stephen on today. We're going to learn about his journey, and let's just get started. First of all, Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Except I'm Stephen. Before you jumped on, I was telling William how I've got to share a story, of course.
Mm.
I went on a trip and I can't find my razors, so I'm using a razor that I'm not used to, and I shaved it all the way down,
Mm.
and so now I'm staring at myself,
Yeah.
feeling like a cue ball for the next 40 minutes.
Yeah, so I had actually an experience where I messed up something on my buzzer and I like took off all the hair. So then
Mhm.
Yeah.
obviously I had to take it all down, and then I
Mhm.
looked and I was like,
What?
"Oh my God, I look like my father," and it scared the shit out of me. And, it's a story
Yeah,
for
yeah.
another time, but
Well, that's where I'm at. I'm kind of feeling like, it's a different feel today, but definitely nothing like William. When he shaves his,
Oh, yeah.
he goes straight to the skin,
Oh, yeah.
buzzes his head. Well, I guess you kind of do look like me, bald and no
I
facial
do.
hair.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
but he
Uh,
rocks
but
it better.
but I haven't owned a razor in 15 years. So when I go to my barber, they'll take it down to a, one or two or whatever, but that's it.
let's bring it.
I literally don't own a razor.
When
So
I started Journey, we started, and we'll
yeah.
we'll talk about it, obviously. I started as a meditation company, and when we were fundraising, I had this big beard. I mean, for those of you not watching, it was probably
Yeah.
8 inches below my face.
Oh my goodness.
It was very on brand, right? It was really selling the
Yeah,
story.
That's
Like,
right.
this guy's
Right.
got to be legit if he has a beard like that.
100%.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
that guy.
You're getting in
Yeah,
position the whole bit. Like yeah.
yeah,
Like
That,
I can actually see that.
but
yeah.
actually, the funny thing is, the truth is, it actually was authentic. Like, I actually just gave way less. I'm assuming I'm allowed to curse on this.
Oh,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
good.
I just gave way less fucks about everything,
Yeah.
including how I looked, and it was very liberating. So it was
Yeah.
actually amazing. Then, of course, I met my wife, and now she wants me to look a certain way, and now I got to like this.
And your wife said, shape up, dude. Like, I
Yeah,
don't care what company you have. I don't care what
Yeah.
role you're playing.
Yeah. I need
Yeah,
you to be over here like this.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
exactly.
somewhere
yeah.
normalcy. Well, Stephen, why don't we do introductions? Tell us a little bit about your current company and what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the founder and CEO of Journey. We are a mental health company, specifically a proactive mental health company. So we help people to incorporate good habits on a day-to-day basis, all around behavior change and habit formation, so that they're able to live happier, healthier, less stressed lives. And we work with enterprise companies. So we support big organizations like Walgreens and L'Oreal and American Express to support their employees and their family members.
So, Ryan, you got
Go ahead.
something?
No, go for it. Go ahead.
So we had a guest on yesterday, and he was talking, and he said, "Listen, it was a financial wellness, so different, tangential to you, but."
Wellness.
And he said, "Listen, think of wellness and the things that you can do, uh, both good and bad, behaviorally, and then think of nutrition and the decisions that you make, good and bad, and run those parallel. Just think in your mind and run those parallel that, there's things that you do that, kick off those endorphins or the dopamine, etc. In finance, like spending money, you go and you spend a bunch of money, and endorphins are kicking. Well, he said for some people, eating's like that. They go and have, and he talked about himself actually. He's just like, I'm going to have some bad food. That's terrible for me in about an hour from now, and I know it, but I'm going to make up for it by doing this, this, and that. And so the question is, first of all, if you like those parallels, can we think of mental health in the same way?
Absolutely. And I love it because one of the challenges is people societally still only think of mental health as mental illness, right?
Right.
They're not thinking of it
Correct.
as mental health. So you think about things like physical health, right? Like in the 70s, people weren't exercising the way they are now. Like running was a weird thing. Right now, societally, we know whether we do it or not is a different thing, that we should, to your point, eat well. We should take care of our bodies. We should have some movement. But we don't think of mental health as like, okay, on a day-to-day basis, I should be meditating, journaling, prayer, what have you, something to be introspective, to look inward, to find that quiet and that peace, and actually, set yourself up for a good day, a good life, etc. So yeah, I love the parallel.
When did you start to see the change from mental health being viewed as an illness versus
Mm.
taking care of yourself?
recently. So the pandemic, obviously, as terrible as it was for so many reasons, was something that expedited our understanding of the importance of mental health, because people that didn't have like mental health issues in terms of illness were burning out and were really struggling with loneliness and isolation. And so people and companies were saying, hey, we need more of this. And I think generationally, there's also a big difference. Guys, I'll say in and around our age, right, may have some relationship to it. But if you look on either end, if you look, much younger, teenagers, Gen Z, they're much more comfortable talking about their mental health. And then you go the opposite, like our parents' generation, they're not talking about it. Like therapy, that's not a thing, right? I'm going to talk about my feelings. So I think we're getting better over the last few years. But I would say the challenging part is we're facing an uphill battle because the stressors continue, whether it's social media or, as we were talking about before we started, right, the election and
Yep.
mass shootings, and it's just like no shortage of hits on our brain. And so we need to have that in order to just kind of survive in the world we're living in.
So the way that we've, from an HR perspective, the way that we've dealt with mental health historically is through EAPs, and it's reactive in nature. So if somebody has some type of episode, and then we're going to throw some resources at it, and help them get through that, whatever the episode that was. You're on the other end of that in proactive. Tell us a little bit about, what is proactive mental health?
Yeah. Well, it's about building, or in our case, we work through enterprise, right? So helping employees to incorporate mental health proactively on a day-to-day preventive basis, right? So the same way we're going to the gym and exercising so that we don't end up in physical therapy, right? We can have physical therapy when something goes really wrong. Same way we offer therapy, and that's available, and we want to make sure people have that, but we want people to have healthy habits. So how do you incorporate meditation, journaling, breath work, insert, practice of your choice, right?
Right.
Being in community, being in nature, so that you are keeping yourself balanced and centered and grounded and ready for whatever the world throws at you.
I like that it's not one dimensional in that it's about meditation or it's about calmness or one thing. You would approach and Journey would approach individuals and just say, let's figure out what works for you. It might not be meditation. Okay, cool. Like I like that you're coming at people multidimensionally with, hey, listen, the whole idea is to get you to a place where you're reflective and calm.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all about providing the right care at the right time. And somebody might need a therapist. They
Right.
might need a psychiatrist. They might need something more significant, right? Because there is a full spectrum, and people
Right.
aren't at one point throughout their whole life. People will move back and forth. And I think we didn't talk about this yet, but when I started the company, actually, it was a little bit different. I started as Journey Meditation Inc., which is still the legal name of the company, because meditation was the practice that changed my life. So we started with meditation. And then I realized, well, I'm actually not, like, while meditation helped me, I'm kind of agnostic as to what's going to help you. The same way, if you do CrossFit and somebody else does yoga and somebody runs, I don't care as long as they're staying healthy, right?
Right.
And so that's when we started adding all these other subclinical modalities. And then in the middle of the pandemic, we said, you know what, we can do more. And then we added all this clinical support. So happy to share, more about that, of course.
Yeah, and Stephen, I know this is going to be a story of your journey, no pun intended, well, maybe pun intended. We're going to learn about your journey, your background. But before we go backwards, maybe walk us through. I've always been fascinated over the last couple of years, the conversation that services or companies like Journey are having with HR leaders and leaders within companies, because I in my gut, I feel as if, at least historically, these conversations were getting into a company in this way was highly dependent on the person you're talking to.
Mm.
Is that leader a believer? Do they believe? If they were if they practice yoga, they practice meditation or practice prayer, they'd be open to the conversation. What is that conversation like today versus pre-pandemic or prior to all of this being more open in conversation?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it actually ties into some of the business decisions we've made. So up until about 2 years ago, we still have, but our main product was called Journey Live, and it was a digital proactive mental health solution. And it complemented EAPs. And as you talked about before, EAPs, very traditional. Most people don't use them. They're reactive, et cetera. And in that case, we had to have, as you said, Ryan, believers who would say, we care about proactive mental health, and we're going to buy this to complement our EAP. And that happened a lot during the pandemic. And then after the pandemic, priorities shifted. Companies were laying off people. There was the Dobbs case, so a lot of companies were concerned about, and rightfully so, providing more support there. And so the idea of proactive mental health became, it's important, of course, but it's not number one. So then we said, well, why don't we go to where the budget already is? So we took everything that we were doing and combined it with exceptional clinical care, great crisis response, et cetera. And we launched this product, this first of its kind product called Journey Proactive EAP. Because if you're going to have an EAP, you may as well have a great one, right? Instead of this being a check the box benefit. So then it went from, I have to be a believer of this to, well, I have one and I have one that sucks. Why don't I have one that's actually awesome? One that's going to really help people and change the culture and support me as an HR leader, et cetera. But there is, so that I think answers your question, but there is another thread in there, which is around the language that HR speaks versus the language that executives at their companies speak, and how to bridge the gap, because HR, they understand, right? Their chosen career path is in supporting people, right? And so they understand how important it is to provide mental health support, and they're the ones that get the calls when something goes wrong. So they know what that's like. The executives, the CFO, that's not their world. They're doing a million other things, right? So even if they're a really warm-hearted person and intellectually they understand it, they're just not close to it. And so while HR might be talking about this is the right thing to do, we need to make the case to executives, or help them make the case, this is going to reduce your healthcare spend. This is going to reduce turnover. This is going to reduce, et cetera, right? This is going to
be a different conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So William, this reminds me of a conversation we just had recently with a woman who she does executive coaching, Stephen, and it's almost as if she plays, and she probably won't like the analogy here, but executive coach / therapist to the executive is kind of how I kind of took that. And it's almost as if an executive who's going through that, and the company supports that, right? So the company sponsors the coaches for their executive team to help them along the path. I feel as if that is in the company already. The leadership's already experiencing that. They'd be more open to something like this.
It's like they've signed off on that. Like your high potentials, your high performers, your executives. It makes logical sense that you'd like to bounce ideas off of somebody else, and maybe see around a corner or see things that you can't see. And the way that you're talking, Stephen, is this. It's similar in the same vein, at least, as mental health. Having someone that guides you through, and if for no other reason than just increased morale and productivity and less lost days at work and things like that, it makes financial sense.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't need to convince most HR people that this is the right thing to do, and nor do I want them to try to convince the CFO that it's the right thing to do. There are certain cultures that obviously do that, but most of those have already taken action on this. This isn't a new problem, right? I want them to say it actually affects our bottom line if the first line of defense is a reactive program where people have spent 8 weeks spiraling and then they call and it takes them 6 more weeks to get care. That's really bad for business in every way. So that's the case.
Well, why don't we go back? Let's go to high school, college, wherever we want to go. What did you want to be when you grew up? What was the kind of the dream of sorts?
So if we go back a little further, I wanted to be a baseball player, but I lacked both the talent and the dedication to get there. But I was always entrepreneurial. So like in summer camp, I was selling sodas to the kids, or I started a business called Steve's Snow Removal, where basically I passed out flyers in my community and I hired the other kids to go and shovel the snow. And, I was still shoveling snow also, but my mom would answer the phone and we'd send people out. So I was always like hustling. I grew up in Queens in the 80s and 90s. It was a very like hustle kind of culture. I studied.
You took that to a different level.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I shoveled snow for money.
Yeah.
But you had your mom answering phone calls.
I didn't have a crew.
Dispatching your boys. That's funny.
Yeah, no,
Hey, Johnny, time to go shovel.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, they were happy to make money anyhow. He
Yeah.
was just the sales front that got the business, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
and the truth is, if you consolidate the supply, right, you're able to charge higher prices.
Right.
So in some ways, I never thought of it this way, but having all the kids working together meant we could charge people more than if we were
That's right.
trying to do it on our own. So
That's right. That's
um,
it's
and
called collusion now, but yeah, don't
Yeah.
worry about it.
yeah, the FTC is going to try to break up the
Yeah.
monopoly.
Exactly.
Hopefully you pay taxes because they're coming back at you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So so what after that?
Yeah, so it was always like doing random things in high school and college. When I was in college, I went to NYU, started throwing
Yeah.
parties with a couple buddies, turned that into a company, ended up producing hip hop concerts, did actually quite large ones. Produced a bunch of concerts in Puerto Rico with Eminem and 50 Cent and Ludacris in the Bahamas and a bunch of other stuff. And that was not my path. That was a good friend of mine. He ended up, going and building that into quite a nice
You weren't
business.
part of Fire or what was that called?
Firefest.
Firefest? Was that you? Or did we
No,
have like
no, this
No.
because I was long retired when Firefest came around.
There's actually a second
Yeah.
one that there's a guy behind it that's actually trying to get it done.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's the same
Yeah.
guy. I think. I think
I
he's
think
going
it
to
is the
make
same
a lot of money.
Yeah, he will.
Yeah.
Because all the attention of the first one, now he'll have the enough eyeballs and earballs and all that other stuff to get people to then go to it. So I think it's Fry Fest, right? Something like that.
Firefest, yeah.
FYR, yeah.
Yeah.
So
This was not
so
that. This was not
did
that.
did you meet some of the did
Yeah. I had a good conversation with Eminem, 50 Cent, and I played basketball together because basically it was part of this thing called Mix Show Power Summit, which was
right?
a big weekend where all the radio DJs from around the U.S. get flown in by record labels, and then the record labels fly in their new artists to perform, to do these like listening sessions. But
Oh,
at night,
cool.
they do these big concerts. So it's one big concert every night. So one was like Wyclef and Alicia Keys and
Oh
Busta
yeah.
Rhymes, and yeah, so we organized that, and so yeah, spent a lot of time there. But this is, keep in mind, like I'm dating myself. This is like 2002,
Yeah,
2003
yeah,
kind of.
yeah. But Eminem he was the hottest, and 50 Cent. They're the hottest people on the planet. So
Yeah,
I
this
mean,
was
at that time.
yeah, this was before 50 Cent's album had dropped. And we were talking about,
Wow.
because he had like the hottest song in New York, but in the
Right.
club, his big song hadn't come out.
Right.
And he's like, just wait for the next one, just wait. And so,
Nice.
yeah.
I want to ask a question about any of those people that you met that you kind of they let you down, like and I'll ask the opposite of somebody that you met like, oh my God, they were so awesome. Like I met Coach K,
Yeah.
and I didn't have a great experience, and it's nothing about him, but I met him at a national championship, and Duke had already been eliminated. And I went to Arizona for my master's degree, and so I met him like in the hallway, just kind of going from one to the next. And I'm like, and I was with my brother, and we're like, "Hey, Coach K." He's like, "No autographs." We're like,
I could have been looking at you and be like, "Oh, Back
I didn't want an autograph. I
Yeah.
was just saying hello.
just wanted to shake your hand, man."
It's like from that time forward, I'm like, okay, like I mean, I'm sure it was just a moment in time, and he's a great guy, but
I mean, isn't that,
it shattered my idea of who he was. It shattered it.
well, isn't that what they say, right? Never meet your heroes. That's
Never
it.
meet your.
Yeah.
That's the thing. No,
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Like most of these guys, like the ones I remember, were all like super nice, quiet. I met Kanye before he was Kanye. Like he was already,
Yeah.
he was in the car accident. He was doing
Yeah.
beats, but he hadn't put out his own stuff yet. And I got introduced to him one night and like took him around, and he was like super polite and kind. I mean, this was before the whole, probably didn't know I was Jewish, but this was before that whole thing came about for him. So yeah, no, people were actually quite like nice and normal and pretty down to earth, surprisingly.
Nice. So far we've got hustling your friends out the shovel,
Yes.
throwing parties turned it into a business, which that's better than me because I threw the
I thought-
parties in
I
college.
thought the parties were going to lead to gambling, setting up gambling facilities.
That's
and doing-
next.
Okay,
That's
because that's
next,
where I
yeah.
thought when he first said that, I'm like, he's doing DJing,
We're
and
not
he's
judging,
going
Stephen.
he's
We're-
going down
we're
the
just-
path of setting up his own his own book so that
Yeah.
people can
Yeah,
go and gamble, which, no judgment. I'd like to do that.
he's thinking about it now. He's like, it's
Uh,
I think I missed
not
I
a bad
missed
idea.
I missed that one.
you missed that
I
opportunity.
mean, I threw the parties. I never turned it into a business other than getting paid to DJ. But I've
Right.
never. I mean, you took it to the next level. So what's next?
100%.
How do we continue here?
So when I graduated, this is 2001, I ended up working for a company called the Award Group. And basically it was run by two older gentlemen. And it was a company that helped organizations celebrate and inspire their employees. And small company, 20, 25 people. And I joined to run their nonprofit division. So basically to help nonprofits recognize their donors and hopefully raise more money. So it
Oh,
like very
cool.
much aligned with like my heart. Like I wanted to do something that mattered. And I loved business. I graduated from Stern. I went to the business school there undergrad. And so I like the idea of like, I'm going to build a business and I'm going to do something that matters. So I was doing that simultaneously. I was actually bartending with a buddy of mine at one of our friends' bars. So I was doing that every Saturday night, and that was a lot of fun. I was kind of, just grinding. Like I was building the business by day, hanging out, partying by night, young and single, and in New York. And along the way, I ended up starting a different department within that company. So basically, I don't know if either of you know this, but there's these really random niche things called deal toys or tombstones or lucite that investment banks give to their
Yeah.
clients when they
Yeah.
close a deal. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, my friends all went into investment banking and they came to me and said, "Hey, you're doing like awards. Can you make like one of these things?" So I was like, "Sure. Yeah. Why not?" And
These are the glass things that sit on the desk, and it's got the
Mm.
acquisition or whatever the bid is, the tombstone, but it's I would say paperweight. It's actually an award.
it's an award. And if you know
Yeah,
anything about investment banking culture, especially back then, the bigger the better, the more elaborate.
100%,
So
100%.
we did really well, right? Like the market was right, and that department took off much faster than the nonprofit one. And so fast forward to 2006, I'm kind of telling the stories in parallel, so bear with me. Actually decided I wanted to buy a bar. So a buddy of mine and I actually bought a bar on LaGuardia and Bleecker. We redid everything, the name, the logo, this, that. It's now a Bear Burger, by the way.
Yeah.
But we had a great run. We took over the last 2 years of a 10-year lease. NYU was the leaseholder. They wanted like a proper restaurant. They didn't want like a college bar,
Right.
post-college bar. Did that while simultaneously working at this company. So I was at this company, the Award Group. I had this department that I was running. Technically, I was running a few departments, but this was like my baby. I ended up purchasing it in a management buyout. So that was October 2007, peak of the stock market. Now, nobody knew it
Yeah,
at the time.
yeah,
Like the
yeah.
market was, well, some people did, but they were way smarter than really. And
100%. We've seen the movie. Yeah.
yeah, we had a bunch of good months, and then the market gave out. And of course, if you remember the financial crisis, there were no deals happening. Every bank was going
Right.
into business, and we had this crazy non-compete with my previous bosses because of the fact that like I didn't have the money to buy that department, so they had to lend me all this money. So they were like, "Yeah, you can take the company, but you can't go outside of this very tight box of investment banking."
Right.
So what did we do? We cut costs really quickly. I had to cut my salary to next to nothing. Like everything kind of came to a crashing halt. However, we read the market different than our competitors. So a lot of folks in this space had been in it for a long time, and they had thought they had seen things like this before. Oh, it'll, slow down, about not, holy shit, the wheels are falling off the bus.
Right.
Well, we ended up being positioned really well because we cut costs so quickly. And then we ended up consolidating the industry. So we rolled up the second, third, and fourth largest companies in the space, small companies, 5, 10 million in revenue,
Right.
along with a few independents. And then when the market came back a few years later, we ended up opening offices in London, Sydney, Hong Kong, Montreal, and Taiwan.
Capturing the financial markets, the different financial markets around the world.
Exactly. Yeah, working with, UBS and Goldman and
Hmm.
Bank of America in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in
Yeah.
Shanghai, et cetera.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So I can pause there. I can keep
Yeah.
rolling today.
Well, you just kind of glossed over that you graduated from Stern. For the audience, Stern's Business School at NYU is like one of the best business schools in the country. So he just kind of ran through it really quickly. I just want to make sure that audience as the edification of like,
It's a humble
not
past.
it is a, it was a humble thing. Kind of just went through it really quickly. How was owning a bar? I,
Uh, really fun. And we had a partner who was the sort of operator who was
right.
not the most honest. And that's hard in a cash business when people are young and they're
Oh yeah.
drinking, and there's young men and
Hmm.
young women around. And so financially, it didn't work the way we wanted to. Like we were massively successful in terms of bringing in people because we had been doing that at our friends' bar. So we're like,
Right.
let's just bring them all over here. So we didn't make TLDR, we didn't make any money, but we had a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. I can see that.
Yeah, so this was like almost a bar rescue episode,
Yeah, exactly.
essentially. Yeah, yeah. I've always it always, and I know it's scripted. I know it's TV, but the amount of people that get into bars at scale with zero experience just blows my mind. Blows my mind.
Same
Yeah,
thing with restaurants.
I
I
was gonna
Yeah,
mean,
say
and restaurants. Yeah,
I was gonna say
it's
the
yeah.
same thing. You see restaurants popping up. I mean, where I am in the West Village, all the time they pop up, another one closes. I mean, it's a dream, right? You want to cook for people, you want to create
Hmm.
that environment, you want people to drink and break bread. It's very human, but the business part of it is really challenging.
Yeah.
it's yeah.
So
You've got to have somebody, a partner like y'all did. Unfortunately, that person wasn't a great partner in that
right.
way. But you got to have a partner that just isn't the partier. Is not, he or she is not doing that. They're managing the P's and Q's and scheduling and making orders come in and keeping costs down. You almost need a dork, if
Yeah.
you will, that runs the business so that the other part of the business can be great.
Yeah. So Stephen, up until this point, let's take a pause here. Uh, Up
Yeah, how,
until this point, you've seemed to have been going up, 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 up. All
yeah.
success.
How's your mental health?
Yeah, no, we haven't gotten there yet. Where? So you came out of school on fire, but
Hmm.
where's that drive come from? Where's that motivation? Where are you finding that drive?
Yeah.
So I actually came out of school and didn't get a job immediately. I had like a random finance job where I had actually moved home and was living in Queens. I was very heavy, so I lost 85 pounds. Back then, people always ask if it's tied to my mental health practice, which it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was very, very heavy and just wasn't in a great place back then. But growing up, I grew up in a town called Douglaston, which for those people that know Queens are like, oh, that's Long Island. Well, no, it's
Mm,
not. It's Queens, right? It's
yeah.
on the border.
It's right
But
there.
when I went to
Yeah.
school, I went to school in Queens. Like my high school had 4,500 kids. When I went to camp, I went the other way to a fancy rich camp because my mom worked there. My mom like literally drove the school bus, the camp bus, and I was like the bus counselor. And so I grew up close to, but not having money, right? Like everyone in my family was very wealthy except my actual family. Like my
Yeah,
uncle was
love
such,
that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Been there.
no,
Yeah.
it's like we'd go to my uncle's house for the holidays and it would be
Right.
amazing because it would be beautiful. And then we go back to my house and like my dad was always in and out of work. My mom was a school teacher. Like
Yep.
sometimes the electricity would go out because we hadn't
Yep.
paid the bills. Like it was like, not ideal, right?
Hmm.
Right.
Um, and so I just kind of wanted to have a better life. Like I saw that. And again, part of it was the culture, right? It was like the 90s and, Biggie and Puffy and this and that. And
Hmm.
like
Oh yeah.
being around entrepreneurs and the business part, being around the societal part in Queens and also seeing that. But one interesting thing that I learned really early on, and this is like fascinating given what I do now, is that the rich people weren't any happier than my middle class friends in Queens in Middle Village.
Right.
Like, so
Right.
that was kind of like that's kind of weird.
Money doesn't buy happiness.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
it's ironic.
It
it
gives you a
is.
peace of mind, but it
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah. But
buy the
I
happiness.
think I've thought about this with like people that come into a lot of money fast, whatever that may be, and they don't know what to do with it. Let's say you've just never had money, and all of a sudden someone dies, and all of a sudden now you've got $10 million. I've seen so many people with this in my life that they just blow it because they never had money, so they didn't
Yeah.
know what to do with the money. And so, like going to a financial manager or doing like the wealth management or any of that, I'm gonna go buy a truck, like like people doing, and it's just because
Hmm.
that was what they grew up with.
Yeah.
They didn't have money, and they got money, and then they just went through it, burned through it.
To take it to another extreme, there's a story. I think it's in a Sebastian Junger book, but I'm forgetting. But it's basically about a person goes and lives with an indigenous tribe, and the tribe has, really high bouts of, all disease and things like that, and a life that we would look at and say, oh, that's really challenging.
Hmm.
These people are extremely happy, and he asks him, like, how are you in spite of all these things? And he's like, well, we belong to the land, we belong to each other, we belong, and in our lives, we tend to be living these separate lives, and we make a lot of money. I mean, some people, right? Hopefully,
Yep.
if that's your aspiration, and then you end up like, is this it? Like, I
Yeah.
did all this, and that's it.
Now what?
So, yeah.
So there's this story about Red Cloud that in the late 1800s, there was back east, there was a bunch of people that, mostly women, that wanted to raise money for the Indians. So they would raise money and they would buy all this stuff, lamps and paintings and just all this beds and all this stuff. And they took a train ride out, met Red Cloud, and he's with the tribe, he's super humble, and they give him all this stuff. And then they leave because they thought they had done something really, really cool for Red Cloud and the tribe. And they come back in a year, and Red Cloud's like in a shanty of a hut, and he doesn't have any of the stuff that they gave him. And they're like, what's up? Like, we gave you all the stuff because you're a chief. He goes, I'm a chief because I don't have stuff. That's the reason I'm a chief is I give other people things, not because I have things. The peace comes from not having those things and helping others.
Yeah.
And it's like they didn't get it, so they didn't come back next year. they didn't get it, but it's just a kind of, to your point, it's just a kind of a different way of looking at happiness,
Right.
and fulfillment, which I think is along the way somewhere in the mix on mental health. So what did you do? What did you do next? What was your next step?
So took that company, built it for a number of years. And when I say a number of years, I spent 5 years working at the award group. Then I
Right.
purchased the division. Then I, like put all the different companies together, had to figure out the culture, how to make it, these were competitors, right? How to make
Oh,
it
yeah.
really sing and gel. And then we did the international expansion. So here's where the mental health part comes in. We opened these offices and there wasn't a logical person to go to Sydney. And I kind of said it like, just kind of saying it, not really thinking about it. I was like, fuck it, I'll go. And then I was like, actually, maybe that does make sense. So coincidentally, it was the winter here and the summer there.
Uh-huh.
But it was
Bondi,
also, yeah,
Bondi Beach, here I come.
lived in Bondi. But it allowed like the managers who had been there for a long time to kind of step up even more because I was gone, right? I was, 12, 13, 14 hours away.
Right.
But I didn't realize how good it would be for my mental health. I wasn't thinking about that at all. All I was thinking is, let's go open an office in Sydney and it's sunny there and I'll go for a month and I'll come back. And then a month became 2 and then 3. And then after 6 months, I was like, okay, this is a bit, it was like I actually have a full company and this is working in an office.
I'm surfing every day. Plus, oh, by the way, the women in that part of Australia are gorgeous. So
It was really nice for a lot
Yeah.
of reasons.
yeah.
And then coincidentally, serendipitously, I stumbled upon a book on Buddhism. So I found this
Oh,
book
cool.
and it really spoke to me. And if you ask me the title of it, I'll tell you because it's funny.
What's the title?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, right? Like
I feel like that was a cue to ask.
it was
100%.
cute to ask because
100%.
when I tell the story, people are always expecting it to be like this ancient text, like I dust it off like Indiana Jones, kind
It's Buddhism for dummies.
of Buddhism for busy people.
There you go.
Yeah.
Actually, I can see that. I mean, I haven't read the book but I can see that because breaking things down and making it bite-sized so that people can come in and get a chapter, learn instead of trying to read the whole text and understand everything. I can see that, actually.
Yeah, it was great. It was about a married guy who like found Buddhism and it really changed his life. And so for me, the meditation part was really helpful.
Right.
And one thing that I'll tell people is like the difference for me in my life between being heavy, like 85 pounds overweight, and now is not as significant as it was before I meditated and once I was meditating. Like that change was even more significant than losing almost 100 pounds. So
Wow.
that's how profound it was for me.
were you practicing as you grew up? Were you practicing? Like, did y'all go to temple and things like that? Because
We were
the
like,
question is more about prayer.
we were traditional Jew-ish New Yorkers. Yeah,
I'm traditional
Ish.
Catholic-ish, so I'm
yeah,
familiar with this concept.
I like
yeah.
that.
You go like,
Jew-ish.
2, 3 times a
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
Get
Now we're
together
right.
for the holidays because it's about
Yeah,
family. But no,
yeah.
I think I think at that point, I'm in a different place now actually, but I think at that point I
Right,
was not like really believing in God or anything like that.
right, right.
Nor am I Buddhist. Like that's not my jam. But what I found was there was actually like really practical lessons in there around suffering and peace of mind, and there's a path and there's a way. And so because it was intellectual, it wasn't
Yeah,
like the stuff I learned growing up, which was like you can't eat cheeseburgers. By the way, I had some cheeseburgers last night. You can't use like can't. We didn't follow any of it, so it was like, well, this is not helpful. So it
right.
was it was not religious at all for me. It was really just this is a guide to live life. But the meditation
Yeah.
was the like interactive part, right? The part
Right.
where it came to life for me.
I
Who are
love it.
who are your mentors as you're coming up? Not necessarily personal, or it could be personal, your choice.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
who are your mentors as you're going through this journey and building, and now I'm assuming about to get into journey itself?
Uh,
Yeah.
there's another step or two along the way, but yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, it's a wide range. You know, when you first started the question, I immediately thought of my uncle, who I mentioned before. That's my mom's
Mm-hmm.
brother,
Right,
who in many ways was like a father figure to me.
right,
And what he had built as a business owner was really impressive to me. So growing up, being able to I don't want to say see that, but see his success was nice. As I got older, it became all the kind of traditional CEOs that you would look towards, like the Jack Welches, right? Now, obviously, I'm
Mhm.
dating myself, of the time. But then when I started to get into meditation, it was people like Jack Kornfield, who like I went
right,
on a retreat and was like more of a fanboy there than when I met, all those rappers that we talked about before.
right,
Because of the way he like moves through the world is like very aspirational for me. Like I want to be really equanimous, like where I'm not getting upset about work things or things with my wife. I want to be really patient. I want like those qualities that like I didn't grow up with. I mean, we all have
right.
them, right? But like that wasn't what I nurtured. I nurtured my hustle or my ability to communicate or my ability. But like some of those things, those I don't know if they're deeper qualities, but like different qualities, let's call them.
Hmm.
Those are the people who really inspired me,
Who, while
which
you're
is
going
deep.
through, while you're going through this process, how did you change as a leader and as a manager of talent of people?
It's a really good question. I think everything just slowed down a little bit.
Right.
There was a line that I had read in Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, probably a decade before that, which was you want to be efficient with things and effective with people, right? So if it's a thing, I want to move through it quickly.
Huh.
It's a person, I want to
Yeah.
be effective. But I never really like got it.
Right.
But then I started to just like slow down. I don't want to say calm down because that's has the
Yeah.
wrong
Yeah.
feeling to it, but just like where I could be with you and be more present and not have to like rush on to the next thing. But it's still, I mean, here we are, I started Journey February will be 10 years. I was meditating for a bunch of years before that. It's still a challenge. Like it's still very ingrained in the, go, 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 let's do things. But it,
Right.
it, it helped as a leader a lot. And I will say one other thing. When I started the company, I was very concerned that if I started a company around this thing that was like deeply personal to me, it would kind of ruin it. Like if I was like,
Yeah.
I'm a long-suffering Mets fan. Like if I went to see the field every day, it would take away the joy
Go
of,
Phils.
yeah. Well, it's better than me.
I was about to say, is this a Mets, Jets, Nets thing? Like, are you all in on all of them, or did you just Mets?
I'm Mets, Giants, Knicks, and Rangers. I don't know if that's better.
I
Go Birds.
I
so
mean,
so, but long-suffering Mets fan. I
well,
totally understand.
so
Totally get it.
I mentioned this because I thought that starting a meditation company, obviously now a mental health company, would take away some of my joy. But what it actually did, going back to your leadership question, is it made me raise the bar for how I showed up in the world. Because if you're running a
Mm.
mental health company, you probably want to, or if a meditation company want to show up and have a culture that's different than if you're working in finance or working in energy trading or working in,
Right.
and the people who gravitate to that also have a higher bar for what they're looking for. So that was a big step of like, okay, I actually have to elevate in
Yeah.
how I'm showing up.
Is that
How did
difficult to do?
No, it wasn't then. It's difficult to be consistent with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
Intentionality. The
Yeah.
intentionality is, for me, sorry, is that's the hard part, is being intentional and not letting my natural reactions take over. And like I said, calming, slowing myself down because I make decisions really fast, and that's great and not great simultaneously. So I find that focusing on intentionality has actually helped me slow down.
yeah, I think I agree with that completely. I think the part that's hard for me is, and I don't know if either of you guys are married, but yeah, it's like one of those things where it's like you react to something in real time, and then
Right.
you're like, oh, I didn't really handle that well, and maybe you remember, maybe you don't, maybe you clear it, maybe it wasn't even a thing for you. But
Yeah.
if you're married, you'll appreciate this, right? 4 years later, you're like, remember that Tuesday when you said that thing? And you're like, wait, what? Like yesterday? Yes, yesterday Tuesday? No, 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 4 years ago Tuesday. You're like,
You said I spend too much money on scotch.
right.
Yeah.
So it's like people remember, on a serious note, people remember things, right?
Yeah.
So it's the consistency part. Like it's not when the three of us are sitting and talking about it, it's on the field, in the arena, those times to actually still show up the way I want to. That's where it's hard.
Yeah.
Where did you meet your wife? Or at what point in the journey did you meet your wife?
Not that long ago. We got introduced when I was 40. I'm 45 now, 45 or 46. So yeah, we got introduced and we just hit it off right away. I think both of us were at the right stage, and
Right.
yeah, it was kind of perfect.
That's cool. Okay. Okay. So you were set up? Like there
We're,
was some
I was at
some
the,
family members involved or
thank God, no. I was at the gym. Not that they didn't try. I was at the gym
uh-huh.
we still live in, and I got a text from a woman I had gone on a date with legit like 6 years ago. And she's like, "Hey, Stephen, it's Rochelle." I'm like, "Oh, hey, Rochelle, how are you?" She's like, "Are you still single?" I was like, yeah, why?
Depends who's asking.
I have,
You didn't keep the baby, did you?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I have somebody I want to set you up with. And then I got a long explanation of who she was. She's German and she's an actor and she's smart. And I was like, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
Last text, and she's very pretty. I'm like, now we're talking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. You
So,
buried the lead. You buried the lead.
yeah. Well, the truth is, at this point in my life, I was 40. I was getting set up a lot, and I was
Yeah.
starting this business, and I was like, okay. And then we met, and literally from the second we met, it was just perfect chemistry, and we just had a baby. Well, she obviously
Yeah,
did
yeah.
most of
Yeah.
the heavy lifting on that. But we have a 10-year-old son now. So yeah, I feel very, very grateful. And that's also like, honestly, that's part of where the mental health stuff helps me so much, is like to be really present for her, to be really grateful, to really be able to like appreciate, not like, oh, I have to dot dot dot, like I have to change the
Yeah.
diaper. It's like I get to do this. Like how many people
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
have that joy? So
Yeah.
it helps
Yeah.
me there a lot.
I don't understand parents, especially men,
I have to
that don't
babysit.
change diapers. Like my brother, God love him, he didn't change any of the diapers for both his kids.
Oh,
It's just like that was his bit. Like, yep,
yeah.
not gonna do that. And
That's
I'm
just
like,
part of it. That's just part of the game.
yeah,
You signed up for that.
It's not even
yeah,
a thing.
Yeah.
It's not even a thing. Like they're like waking up
yeah,
in the middle of the night, which
yeah,
thankfully my wife covers because I have to, work during
yeah.
the day. She covers that part. That's much worse than like cleaning the diapers. It's fine. It's no
Yeah.
big.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always gotten me. It is maybe off top. Well, definitely off topic. Where when I hear a lot of fathers that I know, they'll say, "I have to babysit or I have to watch the kid. I have
Have
to."
to,
Like,
have
well,
to.
you're not babysitting. You're kind of just being a
Yeah,
father, right?
yeah.
Like, I'm sure I've said that along the way, but it's really like it's just one of those things that's
Yeah.
always kind of gotten to me. Like, no,
You signed up for this bit.
yeah,
You
you're
remember
the
the
father.
thing that you did, and
Yeah,
so yeah, this is a part of it.
yeah.
Stephen, if you could give last question for me, if you could give any advice to your younger self, back at start. Let's go there.
It would probably be kinder. So be kinder to myself, be kinder to others. Just I think that that's something that I look back on, and like the idea of regret is a Like I don't love that because that has like a weird feeling. But there's
Right.
definitely things that like I could do differently. Business decisions, you know, hey, I
100%.
should have invested in Apple or I don't
Yeah.
know, Nvidia or something. So like, yeah, I don't regret it, but like I would change it if I could. And like I just wish I was like a little bit nicer to myself and probably nicer to other people.
Yeah.
That's what I'd go with.
Yeah.
Love it.
Let's one more question for me, and a similar question, but I want to reverse that. I like to ask, what does younger Stephen tell older Stephen? 10-year-old Stephen tell 46-year-old Stephen to remember or to think about as he's doing what he's doing.
He'd probably say I'm proud of you. He'd probably say, you know, hey, you did pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of my favorite pieces of advice is know thyself. And I think that like that's a real challenge. That's where the meditation really helps me today. Like it's my daily practice. Did it before this. To just like calm my mind so I can actually like see what's important to me, make sure I'm acting in alignment with what I want in the world. Because I found I was doing all this dumb shit that didn't actually serve anything I wanted to do, but it was just like that's what I do. Like, and that's pretty normal. I think a lot of us do
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
So yeah, I think my 10-year-old self. I don't know if he'd have advice per se.
Yeah.
We do this thing in my actual therapy with my therapist where he's like, what would you now tell your 10-year-old self, right? Like, because my parents got divorced, that was pretty tumultuous. When I was
Yep.
18, my father disowned my brother and I. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we just didn't cover today. But yeah, I think my older self would tell my younger self, like, it'll be okay.
You'll be all right. You'll be all
Yeah,
right.
it'll be okay.
You just gotta get through it. You'll be all right.
Yeah,
Stephen, this is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for carving out time for us and our audience. It's just been a great show, so thank you.
this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys.
No worries. No worries. Thanks everyone for listening, watching, and we'll see you next time.